A formal debate operates like a synchronized mechanical system. When evidence aligns with claims, the gears turn smoothly, but introduce a structural flaw, and the entire system grinds to a catastrophic halt. To diagnose exactly why these breakdowns happen, we rely on frameworks like T. Edward Dammer's attacking faulty reasoning. Dammer maps out 5 specific criteria every valid argument must meet. The one most frequently violated in everyday conversation is the rebuttal criterion. To disagree with argument A, you must provide argument B, connected by a substantive rebuttal that neutralizes counter-evidence. When an arguer lacks this evidence, they abandon logic entirely and swap in an evasion tactic. A speaker might sound completely confident, but without a direct engagement of the counter-evidence, their argument is structurally void. There is a widespread misconception that anytime someone resorts to name-calling during a disagreement, they have committed an ad hominem fallacy.
Being rude is a breach of etiquette. The abusive ad hominem is a precise structural violation, occurring only when a personal attack is deployed to ignore or blunt a counterargument. In this flowchart, Node 1 asks, is the statement an insult? If yes, Node 2 asks, is the insult used to bypass counter-evidence? If yes, the argument fails the structural test, deliberately shifting focus onto the speaker's character. Recognizing this specific shift allows us to differentiate between someone who is simply losing their temper and someone whose underlying logic has collapsed. Consider an academic scenario. Professor Lay delivers a lecture on the creative process of sculpture, arguing that a sculptor must imagine themselves trapped inside the stone, trying to get out. A critic dismisses her theoretical insight completely, stating they'd have no interest in her opinions because her own physical artwork is, quote, junk. If we map this exchange onto Dammer's standard form model, we can isolate the mechanical failure. We have a claim regarding the theoretical process of sculpture. To refute it, the model requires an empty box to be filled with valid counter-evidence. Instead of evidence, the critic slides a personal attack about her artwork into that empty slot, masking their inability to refute the actual theory. The aesthetic quality of Professor Lay's physical sculptures has absolutely zero bearing on the logical soundness of her psychological theory of creation. In academic environments, attackers frequently target a speaker's professional status or past output, specifically to bypass the rigorous work of dismantling their ideas. This structural evasion appears in everyday logistics, too. Imagine a tenant who is contractually obligated to keep their apartment clean for prospective showings. When the landlord enforces this rule, the tenant dismisses the request by pointing out that the landlord has been wearing the same unwashed shirt for a week. Resetting our bracket model, the claim here is a legal contractual obligation for cleanliness. Without a valid legal defense, the rebuttal section flashes a warning. The tenant drops a personal attack regarding the landlord's dirty shirt into the void, utilizing an entirely irrelevant metric to dodge a binding agreement. A signed lease agreement dictates the condition of the property. The landlord's personal laundry habits cannot legally invalidate that contract. Logistical disputes escalate rapidly when one party deploys an abusive ad hominem to abdicate their practical responsibilities rather than renegotiate the terms. These logical failures become especially volatile in high-stakes moral debates. Take 2 individuals arguing over the philosophical acceptability of sexual promiscuity. One person attacks the other by stating, "No wonder you think sexual promiscuity is all right. You have never had a good relationship with a woman." To understand why the attacker thinks this makes sense, we have to uncover their implicit premise, the unstated, hidden assumption bridging the gap in their logic. Looking at our model, if we split open the red attack box, the hidden premise reads, because your position stems from a lack of good experiences, your argument is void. This premise is fatally flawed. It confuses an individual's personal psychological history with the objective merit of a moral philosophy. The two are entirely distinct. Once you expose this implicit premise, the emotional sting of the attack dissipates, revealing a hollow argument lacking substantive evidence. In emotionally charged disagreements, arguers target personal histories, exactly because they lack the logical framework required to dismantle a complex belief system. When you are subjected to a personal attack in a debate, the immediate, visceral temptation is to just hurl an insult right back. But yielding to that temptation triggers a structural trap. By retaliating, you implicitly agree that the topic of the debate has legitimately shifted away from the original idea and onto personal character. Retaliation officially destroys the rebuttal criterion for both parties. The formal argument is dead, replaced by a mutual failure to engage with the facts. Yielding to anger signals a formal surrender of the logical argument, sacrificing the moral high ground in the process. To neutralize this fallacy and restore structure, you must execute a maneuver called the procedural pivot. First, explicitly identify the abusive nature of the comment. Calling it out strips away its conversational cover and exposes it as an evasion tactic. Second, force the opponent back to the rebuttal criterion. Look at how this maps out. Damer suggests using a precise, polite redirect. But what do you think of my argument? This maneuver places the burden of proof squarely back on the attacker. They are boxed in, forced to either produce actual evidence to support their disagreement or admit they have none. True intellectual rigor does not mean avoiding attacks. It means systematically steering every debate back to the unwavering standard of the rebuttal criterion.